Okay, let's talk about people pleasing with your kids. Oh my word. This was a light bulb moment for me last year that literally changed so much for me. So I'm going to start at the beginning of like how I got this light bulb moment. And if you don't know, let's just talk about the nervous system real fast because fawning is a part of your sympathetic nervous system. And so you've probably heard of fight or flight, but another one is fawn, okay? And that would be people pleasing, falls under this fawn response. So the reason why we may get stuck in the fawn response is if we lived in a home that was very like strict and we had to do all the right things and we were just trying to please our parents and we just grew up with that desire and feeling, and it was kind of like, well, you just have to, right? Like you can't have a bad attitude, you can't have like another feeling about something they tell you to do, you just need to go do it, right? So if we were raised with, we're trying to please our parents, we can develop this fawn response because we're trying to protect ourselves by pleasing other people. That's what the fawn response really is. It's just a protection mechanism that kicks in when we're not feeling safe to be ourselves, and we are just trying to keep the peace. We're trying to, if we grew up walking around on eggshells, we're going to keep trying to keep peace, even as adults, by pleasing other people when that's not actually our job. Okay, so now that I just dropped that on you, let's talk about a few other things in the sympathetic nervous system that you can go back and forth, right? Between all the parts of your nervous system, you can be fluctuating back and forth unless you're like really stuck in fight or flight or stuck in freeze. But when you're in the fight part of your sympathetic nervous system, you're going to be feeling things like frustration, irritation, anger, and rage. I don't know if that feels familiar to you as a mother, but I know that I have gone into the fight part of my nervous system plenty with my kids. But I don't want to yell at them, right? I don't want to be angry with them. And so then what I was doing is I was tending to going into the fawn response with my kids in order to avoid yelling and anger. And I was just people pleasing because I didn't realize that I was stuck in this part of my nervous system. Flight is another part of the sympathetic nervous system, and that can look like worry and concern, anxiety, fear, panic. So if you are feeling like really worried about your kids, you feel really fearful about their safety, you could be stuck in the flight part of your nervous system, right? And then if you're in the freeze part of your nervous system, which is your parasympathetic part of your nervous system, then you can be stuck in just disassociating. You're doom scrolling, you're numbing out, you're eating all the food, you are sitting on the couch feeling like you cannot be present. You're just like trying to block out all the noise. You cannot handle the overstimulation, and you're just like numb, okay? And I've been there too. So if you've been there, I get it. And it is hard. So let's come back to the people pleasing for a second. So now that we've kind of talked a little bit about some of the different parts of the nervous system you might be noticing, like, I tend to be angry, but I don't want to yell. And so then like I'm people pleasing with my kids because I don't know like how to handle it, right? I don't know how to handle all the requests and all the responses and all the reactions and everything, right? Oh, friend, I'm with you there. But figuring out this thing was so key in me starting to have better relationships with my kids, okay? Because quite frankly, the people pleasing with my kids was making it so I didn't enjoy being with them, right? I didn't enjoy like spending time with them because I was totally people pleasing them and ignoring like my own boundaries. And that explained, when I had this realization, I was like, oh, that's why I'm getting so angry, is because they're totally not respecting my boundaries. And I'm totally allowing them to disrespect my boundaries. I am not communicating my boundaries. I am not saying this is what mom's boundaries are and then actually following through on that. And so then I get angry because they're not following and respecting my boundaries because I haven't communicated them. But I still have these boundaries, right? And so when I started to communicate my boundaries to my kids and say, this is my boundary, and you are pushing it. Like, if you keep asking, this is disrespecting my boundary. I've already said no. That's my boundary, right? I'm saying no, and I've already made the decision. You do not need to keep asking because this is my boundary. And if you don't respect my boundary, I'm going to feel angry and frustrated because my boundary is trying to be crossed, right? And if you communicate that with them, then they can realize that just like they want to have a boundary, right? Like they don't want their sibling to just be able to take their toy whenever they want, right? And we teach boundaries to our kids. We're like, well, that's theirs and this one is yours and you can't have that unless they say it's okay for you to have that, right? Because that is what makes people angry, is when their boundaries are being crossed. That's one reason, right? We can have a sinful reaction to something that is totally, uncalled for, that we're getting angry about. But anger is also a signal to us that a boundary is being crossed. And we might not know that there was a boundary that we had internally that's being crossed, but it's there, right? So we need to be aware, like, what are the emotions that we're feeling trying to signal to us, because they're there to tell us something. They're not there to just, be there. They're actually communicating something to us. They're communicating there's a boundary and it's being crossed, right? And so there's a righteous anger that can happen when we are saying, like, this is mom's boundary. And then if the kids completely disrespect that, then you can have a form of righteous anger. Now, of course, how you use that is really important, and it's very easy to fall into the sinful side of that, right? But just being angry is not sinful. It's what we're doing with it and how we're using it. Are we reacting from anger and then doing an action or behavior from a place of anger? And then we're not being in self-control, right? But just having that feeling is not necessarily a sin, right? David talks about having that feeling in the Psalms quite often. And he gets angry at his enemies who are also crossing boundaries. Now, of course, our kids are not our enemies, right? But you get the idea, right? So it's important that we have that kind of distinction, that having anger doesn't have to be sinful, but we have to be careful, right, in what we're doing with it. Are we communicating well and saying, like, I'm feeling this right now in a kind way that's speaking the truth in love? That's what we want. That's our goal, right? So here's a couple of other signs that you might be stuck in the fawn response, and this could apply to your kids. It could apply to other people in your life. Doesn't have to be just, we don't have to just people please to our kids. But I noticed that the more that I can communicate boundaries, the more enjoyable our relationship is, and the less I'm prone to feeling anger, right? And I don't want to feel anger. But that also is on me, right, to communicate. So other things that are related to fawn response is a difficulty saying no. And I was definitely doing this. Like, my kids were getting way too many yeses from me, and I needed to be saying no, and I needed to be sticking to that. But I was just so stuck in the fawn response, I didn't even realize, like, how much I was just, like, not able to say no to them. Fear of expressing true feelings, like, right, like what I said about, like, hey, if you cross this boundary, mom is going to feel angry, or I'm feeling angry because I already said no, and you are asking again, and you're not respecting my no. You're not respecting that boundary that I've already set. Or denying personal needs. Like, it's okay for us as mothers to need some time. It's okay for us as mothers to prioritize our health. And sometimes that looks like I'm doing exercise and a kid needs something over here and they're going to have to wait. And it's okay for kids to have to learn to wait. And it's okay for them to see that you are prioritizing your health and your needs in that moment. Because, quite frankly, what happens when they grow up and they become a mom, if they never saw you prioritizing your health, are they going to prioritize theirs? No. They're going to let their kids like run on top of them. They're not going to exercise. They're not going to take their vitamins. They're not going to say, hey, I need some time to eat some food because mom hasn't eaten yet. You've had your breakfast. You need to wait. Mom hasn't had anything to eat yet, and I'm really hungry. And this is making me frustrated and irritated because I need some food to settle my blood sugar, right? Like, it's okay to explain that to our kids. We don't have to feel guilty for saying, like, I have needs too, because we're human and we have needs too. And here's the thing, the only person that's going to take care of your needs is you. So if you don't do it, who's going to? And then if you don't do it, you're going to feel resentful at some point. At some point, the resentment is going to build up in you, and you're going to feel resentful that you're not being taken care of like you're taking care of everyone in your family, and it's just going to blow up. Have you had that happen? Okay, guess what? It's on you, because you can take the time to take care of you, and no one else can say, hey, you need to take care of you, and like you have to do it. They can say, like your husband can say, like, hey, you need to take care of you. But at the end of the day, like you're an adult and you have to take care of yourself. You have that responsibility to take care of yourself and your needs. And you have to be, you have to know what those needs are too. Like you have to be aware of like, what do I need right now? Do I need an emotional detox bath? Do I need to just sit in my room and read my Bible for 5 minutes? Do I need to go, make myself a drink? Do I need to go, do I need to eat some lunch? Do I need more protein, right? Do I need to sit for 15 minutes and read my book and have my kids do something quietly, right? Like you have needs too, and it's okay to have needs. Like we need to not push them down, because at some point we're going to become so frustrated and resentful that we didn't take that time to take care of our needs, that we end up blowing up and hurting other people. We do not want that, right? So those are just a few things that I've realized around this conversation of people pleasing with other people or your family or your kids. And so I hope that this helps you become more aware of where you might be fawning or people pleasing in your life. Thank you so much.
It was on the floor.